All right, I'm back here for another interview with a candidate for the Ethlizards Portfolio Sub-DAO Council. This is going to be for Epoch 2 of the Ethlizards, and the voting will take place between June 4th and June 11th, and we're trying to narrow it down to the candidates that we think are going to be best to support the Ethlizards Sub-DAO. Haitzu, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us, a little bit about your background and how you what brought you to Ethlizards.
Thanks for the intro, Nick. Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Jack. On Discord, I go by Haitzu. Day to day, I lead IMX strategy that involves driving the adoption of L2 technology for the protocol. Obviously, we have a token as well. Spend a lot of time working with game studios building on IMX, thinking about the future, thinking about NFT and token implementation. I come from a career in corporate finance, and so I was running M&A for a company based out here in Australia, doing global acquisitions. It's good fun, very Web 2, kind of too boring for me. Didn't like the pace of it, and so wanted to experience more pain and go into Web 3. And so been doing that for the last few years now. I think Ethlizards is just very naturally following Illuvium and the evolution of that whole project. I think it's a great example of communities self-organizing off the back of excellent content like Illuvium. And so been following the space for a while, obviously in gaming. Ethlizards in particular has been just a great representation of player organization as well. I think that's awesome. We need more of those in DAO communities. We need more DAO communities in gaming. And so served on the last Epoch as an investment council member, and so keen to keep the gravy train going.
That's great. That's great. So, what made you want to run again? I guess what makes you deserve a seat to continue? I guess your stay on this council.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a mixture of a few things. Obviously, I do this full time, and so I think about the space a lot. I think we're in day one of the blockchain gaming industry, and so from my perspective, the more active I can be in this ecosystem, the better off this industry will be. And so obviously, I spend a lot of time on IMX protocol, driving that adoption, but beyond that as well, I'm just I like putting my energy towards things that I think actually matter. And so I think for what we're doing in the community, I just think it's a great place for my type of background, coming from investments and working on transactions, and applying it to the governance of DAOs and allocating treasury. I think that's particularly interesting. I mean, I think about the last council. There was a few. What I wanted to make sure happened was IMX was as interlinked with Ethlizards as possible. Obviously, getting as many introductions into some of the titles that I was very personally excited about on Ethlizards. I think that's been priority number one. Super easy win as well from my perspective. It's like today studios are looking for players who actually want to play games, and so Ethlizards is a great example of that. I thought that we did that very well, and then secondarily, looking at transactions and evaluating projects is definitely my cup of tea. And so I think through that was a very natural. That's why I put my hand up last Epoch. But I think I was very impressed by Kieran and Annie and Lou in particular in terms of how they ran the organization. I think the next chapter of Ethlizards is going to be more exciting than the previous chapters. And so from my perspective, the more helpful I can be, the better off the project will be as well. And so I think there's a natural overlap between my interest for the industry, my skill set, and I think just my support for Annie and the team. I've spent a bunch of time with Annie and Lou in particular, thinking about the future of Ethlizards. Not only speaking about from protocols perspective, IMX, but then also just about blockchain and gaming industries together. I mean, I spend a lot of my time thinking about and talking to builders in the space, and so I think that's been awesome. I want to keep doing it, to be fair, and I think we've done some awesome things so far, but I think there's more to come.
So, how do you approach evaluating potential projects? What are the criteria you would consider most important when making an investment?
My mental model has been two things. Like number one, we have limited treasury, and so we're not working in the tens of millions of dollars, and so every dollar we invest is really important, and so we index highly on liquidity, which is, if we're going to take a position, we need to make sure that there's some degree of a path to liquidity for the DAO. So that's one thing. And then also, so treasury management, how do we actually allocate bets the right way for the projects that we see? Number two, obviously, is about what the Ethlizards superpower is, which is about evaluating games. And so from that perspective, I've been very public about not taking positions in non-title specific assets. And so, I think my talking point to the council has always been, our edge is we know games better than other people. We have a rabid community of people who just love gaming and playing high quality stuff. And so we should do more of that. Everything else feels non-core unless we have a very distinct thesis for it. I'm not sure if we can actually talk about this just yet, but we recently, I think the whole DAO knows what we've done already, but we've invested in one of a project from the head of blockchain engineering at Illuvium, who's now spun out, done his own thing. I think that was just super obvious because we know the team very well, and so that's a great use of our capital. So those are the main two things that we might look for. How do we actually have a path to liquidity? How do we lean into the core edges of the DAO? That's been the main points.
All right. So next question is kind of a three-part question here. What are some of the red flags that come up, when you're looking for these investments? What are some green flags? And are there anything that's like a non-negotiable for you?
Yeah, interesting. I mean, broadly speaking, we're looking for, I think, let's start with the market. We'll talk about the product and then we'll talk about the team. I mean, just on a market commentary today, we are in a depressed part of the cycle. And so from my perspective, valuations are going to be much lower than they were, 12 to 18 months ago. I mean, I was part of deals that we never took a position in projects like Solchix back in the day, but I mean, that project was raising at hundreds of millions of dollars of value. Today, it's a fraction of that. And so we're looking for, in this part of the market cycle, attractive valuations, and we're looking for pragmatic pricing from the founders themselves, obviously. It's a commentary on valuation, on the actual studios themselves. We're looking for games that people actually want to play. But I also feel that that's consensus. Like, everyone knows that games before in blockchain were kind of not high quality and also high friction. We're looking for projects which are trying to do something different from what I just mentioned. And so if we could do that, that's interesting. I think we're so early in this industry as well. There's so many genres which are untapped. I'm particularly interested in sports and some of the work with IP that a lot of projects nowadays are doing. So that's interesting. We're looking for unique takes on the market and people leaning into the actual blockchain technology itself. And so we're not looking for people who are just saying, yeah, let me just reskin this Web2 game, but do something interesting with the actual econ and the NFTs and the tokens. And so those are definitely green flags, people who actually lean into why we're here. Otherwise, it's just intellectually lazy to just come in and reskin. And the final part's a team, right? Look for hustlers. I mean, the space moves so quickly. I have a high index towards crypto natives, obviously. I mean, I've spent a bit of time in the space. And so I think we're looking for people who actually get how to market to Web3 players as well. I mean, if you understand Ethlizards and what this community is about, you probably already ticked that. I have less belief in Web2 people who have said the arbitrage is I could print a good game and users will come. Well, no, you have to actually understand the technology and then understand how to actually speak the right language to attract these type of users. But of course, the counterbalance is we're also looking to tap into mainstream. And so how do we not only tap into Web3, but also make it accessible for Web2 is the intricate balance there. And so the red flag actually within that is if you skew too much to one side, that's not as interesting. But I think that comes down to the team and what they're here to do. I think you see a lot of great projects on Arbitrum and on Sui, which are Web3 native projects. And so that's really exciting. And so I'm excited for some of the work over there. So a few things, yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So what do you value most in a new project? Is it the experience of the team or is it the scope of the project itself?
I think I index highly on, I describe it just pragmatism. And I think that manifests itself in a multitude of ways in how the team thinks about fundraising. And the North Star objective is ship. And so I always have a negative reaction when someone tries to sell me a vision without any nuance in how they plan to go to market. And so if I answer your question directly, I think a lot of it comes down to the execution ability of the team. And so do they out hustle other developers? Are they shipping more? Are they more active in communities? Do they have a unique take on the market? I think a lot of my POV is based on a read on the actual founder and how they're thinking about the space. And so probably 80 or 90% is there because you just know that they'll be able to iterate towards product market fit and the success of the title. And so when someone says, I'm going to create a small scale game first and then we'll see what happens, it's not necessarily a detractor. I actually think that's a good thing to say, okay, you have a very distinct opportunity you're looking down. For example, it might be, we're just going to create a very new take on checkers, for example. And we're going to start here, potentially think about other things going forward. I think I like people who are taking a new look at the space as well, because I think a lot of people in Web3 are not innovating. And we should think about unique applications of blockchain around NFT ownership, around the utility of being able to prove ownership on chain. I think those are all, we're so early. And so I like talking to people about that. And so definitely the team is North Star for me and try to get a read of them.
So not all potential investments are going to be Web3 gaming studios. How would you approach, looking for other investments that, maybe in the Web3 space, but not necessarily a game themselves?
Yeah, I think that's a tough one. I think why we invest in game assets themselves is two things. One is, again, we lean into the edge of the DAO, which is these are actual gamers who play games. A majority of the community are Illuvium fans and have heard of IMX. And so leaning into the studios themselves makes sense. That's our skill. And then number two, we also have a rough mental model for how game tokens accrue value. I've been skeptical around, for example, investing in the equity vehicle of game launchers. So the rational argument could be, well, obviously we'd invest in game launchers. We have a bunch of gamers here. But there's two things here. Like one is we don't know what the value accrual model of a game launcher really is. It's like if they launch a token, can you actually predictably talk about how the token will do and what are the growth drivers of it? Is it just let's get a bunch of users on the launcher and we'll see what happens? That feels not strong enough for me. If it's an equity investment, when are you going to ever sell this? How long is the path to liquidity here? Imagine investing 25 grand out of like a 250K portfolio and you're investing 10% on something that might take 7 to 10 years to liquidate. And I'm talking about early stage venture. It takes a very long time for you to get that money back. And so I'm very skeptical of non-studio investments and non-token investments. Andy and I have debated this quite often in the council. And so I think we're still trying to formalize that point of view, but that's my point of view at its core. I would like to see us have, if I were to describe you the optimal portfolio, it would be a bunch of high quality game tokens that we believe in at good valuations that we know the Ethlizard community loves and we can hold for the long term. Ideally, we don't even liquidate any of these tokens that we buy, ideally, because we love the game so much and we just know over a 10-year period it's going to outperform. We can make our money in other ways. I'd like to not make short-term trades on, let's invest 25 grand in this company and then have to sell, upon TG. We might take our chips off the table, but I'd like to not exit positions if we have conviction on it. But I think that whole point of view is also not pragmatic for a DAO like ours when we're so small. And so, but I think I have a very distinct point of view on how to run a good portfolio, and I'd like to stick to that as much as possible. But of course, that's a point of having a lot of different people on the council is to debate these things and make these type of decisions. I have a very strong view on the world, and so I think the group will come to a good conclusion together.
So, what connections, if any, do you have that would support Ethlizards in their search for the best Web3 games?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I spend a lot of time with studios on Immutable. I'd like to see us do more deals over there. I think the common thing that I've heard from the community is, has Haitzu actually brought any IMX deals? We've had deals being discussed on the council, but I haven't actually brought any. I haven't really pushed for any games on IMX, mainly because a lot of them are Web2 studios with. Oh, sorry, my headphones. There we go. A lot of them come from Web2 studios building on IMX, high valuations on the equity level. It just is not worth the investment appetite for Ethlizards. There have been a few that we've been discussing. Aglet on IMX has been one of those. They'll be launching a token soon, which is quite interesting. And so IMX has been key, but also I spent a lot of time outside of the IMX ecosystem. We've had, I'm fans of games like ZK Hold'em, which has been really awesome. I think our partnership is now public, which is cool. On Arbitrum, there's a lot of momentum. Pirate Nation is another one that I'd love our DAO to work with. If you get me on the council, you're getting someone who's very active in the space. I mean, I didn't explain earlier, but I've played games my whole life, and so the fact that I'm working in this space is crazy. And so that's essentially it. So hopefully, some cool stuff from IMX and an insider over there, but more broadly, how do we work with the best games? To me, when I serve on the council, it's for the holders, and so the holders don't care about IMX. Obviously, there's some belief in IMX, but the objective is to hunt for the best games across this wide universe of blockchain games. So we'll continue doing so.
So, given the duration of the council's term is only 6 months, how do you plan to make a meaningful impact in that time frame? And what strategies would you employ to maximize the DAO's growth and success during your tenure?
Yeah, I think we have to be. So number one, we're coming in for the investment council, and so I mean, my core objective will be how do we allocate capital in the right way. My perspective is very old school, which is I would rather us, if we're not high conviction about something, to not deploy capital. I mean, this DAO is representing, it's a steward of the money of all the holders. And so I would hate for us to make the short-term trade-off of trying to show progress to the DAO and say, let's just invest in something this month just to show progress when we should be investing in high-quality assets that we can hold for a very long time. And so from that perspective, my point of view is unless it's high conviction, we shouldn't invest. And so I would rather us protect our capital versus, let's just spray and pray and see what happens. I think past councils have done that, and I've not been a fan. So in terms of growth, we should partner with as many. So just imagine it as a sales funnel. Top of the funnel, any game that we like, we should be working with and partnering and promoting to the DAO. Everyone can make, just to make sure that folks are across some of the studios that we're talking to. As we go progressively lower in terms of taking an investment position, that's where we should be much more structured in how we approach it. And I just think that over a long term, the portfolio would do very well if we take that philosophy. Beyond that, continuing to wave the flag of Ethlizards to the games on IMX and also just across this ecosystem, I think is really important. I think we should evaluate more treasury management strategies. It's hard for the management team today because we've just introduced Annie as CEO, and so we don't have someone who can actually actively manage our treasury. I think earning 8 to 10% on our treasury today is really good. Today, some of that money just stays there. And so if we did that, deploy the right treasury management strategies and also invest in high quality assets, I think the DAO will do very well. I think just the final point, why did this community come together was because we wanted to create opportunities for everyday blockchain gaming investors to have exposure in the early stages to some of the best titles. And so I think we would, if we went down the path of what I just described, that strategy, I think the DAO will do very well and everyone part of this community will do very well. So I'm excited about that.
So, are there any potential conflicts of interest do you have that may affect your ability to make decisions, to make sound decisions on this council?
Absolutely. I I work for the Immutable X protocol, and so I think naturally I have a vested interest in making sure that projects that I promote to the DAO succeed. I think the point here is I'm sit on the management team of IMX, but then also I'm an Ethlizard holder, and so the objective is, as much as I want to see the projects that are built on IMX succeed, I also want to make sure that we're putting our money in the right places as a holder of Ethlizards as well. And so that's an interesting counterbalance. Whenever we voted on IMX projects, I've always said, I know these guys very well. We probably shouldn't include my vote in this process out of that vested interest. But if I just zoom out for us as well, I'm looking for the wider industry to succeed. And so I don't really care about, from my point of view with my Ethlizard hat on, I don't really care about the blockchain that they're built on. If we believe in the management team and they're doing something interesting on their product and users are resonating with what they're building, then naturally we should be investigating. It would be so silly for us to, for me in particular, to say, why are we looking at Arbitrum, Sui, Phantom, etc.? You guys should only be looking at IMX. That would not be serving the right role for the council.
And so to finish this all up, just explain to the viewers why they should be voting for you, why you deserve a spot on this council, and anything else you want to get in here.
Absolutely. I mean, from my perspective, I have not seen my final vision come to fruition at Ethlizards. I'm very bullish about Annie and Lou's management. I've brought a few deals from IMX. We've made a few investments that I'd love to talk about when they come public. I want us to continue growing. I mean, today we are, as I mentioned at the start of this conversation, we're at the start of this rotation back into the bull market for this industry. And so for us, the work has just begun. And the decisions that we make in the next 6 months, we will reap those rewards in the next 2 to 3 years. And so I'm excited to keep going. I'm excited by the community and how well received the contribution that I've made has been, and we should keep cracking on. Otherwise, what's the point of committing to this long-term journey? And so I'm excited. I think the DAO has more to come, and I think this market is going to just rip. And so, broadly speaking, very, very excited. Keen to crack on.
Great. I will leave links to Haitzu's Twitter down below. Also, check out some of the previous interviews I've had on my channel. Check out Artemis's channel. I'll have links down below for a few of the other interviews. Remember, the voting will take place between June 4th and June 11th. And, that's it. Thank you for coming on and, telling everyone what you're about here. And I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you for hosting, brother. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a good one.